Welcome to the post-game lobby, everyone. I am your host, Katie Bedford, joined by our general manager, Mud Dog. This is put on by Optic Gaming Los Angeles to go over everything that we saw in the CDL London tournament this weekend and any happenings occurring around it. Right off the rip, Eric, that was kind of expected in the grand final, but I mean, my God, that was over quickly.
Yeah, I
real
mean, it was definitely a quicker day than I thought. Going into it, I really thought whoever won the Dallas-Florida match was going to win the thing, and I thought that was going to be a much closer match than it was. But that being a quick 3-0 really accelerated the day.
Yeah, it certainly did. If you had said London, Paris was going to go game 5, but then Dallas, Florida was not something that I would have thought. Reminder to everyone in chat, if you have questions for any of us about what happened this weekend, please do put them in chat. We are going to grab them throughout. And at the very end, we're going to pick some to answer for you guys. But I do want to bring in now JCap, who's going to hang out with us for this post-game lobby to kind of break down what we saw in the semifinals today and the grand final. So, Cap, what's up? How are you doing?
Doing great.
My
Just
God, it's Jordan Kaplan.
enjoying some Call of Duty action as always. Love Call of
Jordan
Duty.
Kaplan. I love it. I love it. So let's talk about the very first semifinal we had, London and Paris. If I don't know if you guys would agree, but if I had looked at the 8 teams here, I would say Paris was absolutely the dark horse. If there was going to be anyone that you would be least expected to make to a grand final, Cap, watching what happened there with London, I mean, I'm surprised. Were you surprised? Were you not surprised?
Oh,
Like,
I was shocked. I was shocked, to be honest, by Paris making it when they beat New York in the group play to make it to the bracket. And then the fact that they were able to take out London also completely blew my mind. I didn't expect them to make that run, but I mean, props to them. You know, they made the finals. That's awesome for them. But yeah, when I saw those matchups, I thought it'd be a London versus. I thought the other match would be close, but I thought it'd be London versus either New York or not New York, Dallas or Florida in the final for sure.
yeah, and Eric, I think something that I noticed that I got kind of frustrated by it during my watch party was that in the map 2 search and destroy between London and Paris, and in that map 5 search and destroy, there were multiple rounds where it felt like it was London's to lose, and they just kept giving them to Paris. You would have bomb down and man advantage, and they just lost over and over and over. And I don't know if you can speak to that from your experience, like what might have been going on with the team, but I kept looking at it and being like, why? You keep making the same mistake
I
over
mean,
and over.
with stuff like that, the first thing you traditionally look to is like nerves or something, but I don't think it's something like that. These guys are experienced players and they're playing online in the comfort of their own homes. Like it's just had to be a lack of communication and disorganization there because when you have man advantage situations at the pro level of Call of Duty, it usually takes someone making a pretty stupid play to let someone clutch, especially in the fashion that some of those went down. And even like plays that aren't gonna like be considered stupid, like the one at the end where Dylan got like the 2-piece on the guy playing in the close corner on our club. Like just playing a corner like that, you're setting yourself up where at best you're going to get traded out. And in man advantage situations like that, unless you know you're going to guarantee at least one kill from that, you can't play a spot like that. You need to be able to play a spot where you can play your life, play clock, and let it like dwindle down. So I'm not sure why it happened, but it was definitely some sloppy search there.
Cap, when you watch something like that, if your team is going through something similar, what's it like from that player level being on the team to try and like regain or regroup or just calm yourself down? If it's not nerves, like Eric said.
I mean, after playing for so many years, because those guys are all experienced, like you learn to just like kind of move on. But when it happens in the moment, especially like if you're dead watching your teammates like in a 3-on-2, 4-on-2, and it's like someone gets picked, another person gets picked, it's like, all right, guys, like where are the comms, like where's the teamwork? Because at that point you just buddy up, you play trades, right? And you shouldn't lose those situations. And there's like a rule too when you're dead in search, like you let the players playing like communicate, like you don't say a word unless like you see
I thought
someone
you
that they
it was
don't.
always the second guy's fault, which is also
No,
a
no, no,
rule.
no, no. That's well, that's like whatever, but it's like an unwritten rule. Like if you're dead, you don't talk, unless you actually see something or hear something that's like very, very useful information, you just shut up. So when you see that happen and then all of a sudden your team loses a 3-on-2, 4-on-2, 3-on-1, whatever it is, you're just like, okay, well, I should have said something like, hey, just slow down, group, group up, get together, and you can't really lose at that point.
It also
But
really sucks watching those situations because when you're watching, like if you're dead, you're watching your team in a 4v2 and it gets down to a 2v2, you're like, well, we're losing this round now. Like it's just the way those things go. So it's like really heartbreaking and depressing to
yeah,
watch when you're not alive.
the slow crumble is hard. It's hard to watch.
Well, to that note, I mean, we've got to get props to Paris, right? So Paris, like, yes, London was making misplays, but Paris also took advantage, capitalized, and secured wins on those misplays. And so Cap, you've played against Paris, you've played against these players. It feels like they've been non-existent essentially most of the league, and then just suddenly they're late to the party, fashionably late, and they make a grand final. What do you make of that?
I don't know what to make of Paris right now. I mean, I'm still not high on them necessarily, but like they started the year better than people thought. Like probably average above average when people thought they were gonna be like bottom feeders, and then they actually fell back down like people expected them to originally, and then now they're just in a final out of nowhere. So I don't know. I'm not super high on the train. Plus, they have a bunch of people in Los Angeles, which is not good for online Call of Duty.
Mhm.
But I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, if they make it work, they make it work.
All right, well, let's talk about the second semifinal, Dallas and Florida. So I would agree with Eric. I thought that that was going to be closer, but what I watched from Florida throughout the weekend was that they weren't as dominant as I expected in most of their series. Obviously, Optic taking them to Game 5, Round 11s with the addition of Draws on Hollow in their very first series, taking it to them as well in the second series. But as opposed to Dallas that 3-1 Paris and then got a 3-0 and then got a 3-0 and looked like they were just on cruise control through the weekend. So what do you make of Florida?
I mean, I still think Florida's up there with one of the best teams. I'd probably put Atlanta back above them now. Just like Atlanta's one of those teams the whole year. It's almost like Cap and I have talked about this. Like no matter who they're playing, you can just be like Atlanta's probably gonna win. And like
Mhm.
I just have a lot of faith in that team to pull through. So I'd probably put Florida at like a close third. I'd say now. I
Yeah.
think it's clear that Dallas is number one.
Yeah, that's something that when I went into this, I was like, okay, Florida's got to be number one. We don't want to get too into the weeds because obviously we're going to talk about our rankings later on. But something I've noticed with Dallas all year, Cap, is that their comms seem to just consistently be so clean. I don't know if you have thoughts on that, but it always seems like whenever you get to Dallas, no matter what's happening, they're calm or they're telling each other to calm down. It seems like it reflects in their gameplay.
Um, I'm gonna be honest. I haven't really noticed that, but I
Yeah.
mean, at that point when you're at the top level and like you get into like these intense moments, it's all just muscle memory. Like you've practiced all these situations. Very rarely in COD are you in a tournament. You have a situation where it's like a completely new situation that you've never been in before. And it's like, so it's something you've done before, and like you should know from practice, hey, here's what I'm gonna do, without even thinking about it, really.
Hmm.
So, I mean, when you do see people get frantic, it's really them start panicking. Like that's what that is. When you hear hectic comms and like when it's not clear. But I mean, yeah, Dallas has like Clay and Krim leading, two veterans who have been around forever. So those guys should know how like to keep their team calm and in check when it
Also,
gets into those
with
high pressure situations.
with Shotzi coming from Halo, like Halo players are traditionally known to have really good call outs because that's a
Yeah.
FPS game team based that you don't have a mini map in. So you're
Hmm.
calling out like so much more than even COD.
Well,
Because like COD, like you'll say what you're watching sometimes, but there is a triangle that shows you what your teammate's watching.
on
Like in
that
Halo,
note,
you
Hugh
just actually don't know.
thought you know my bad. On that note, Hugh played Halo too, so yeah, it's a good
Right.
point. They have
Yeah.
all kinds of experience there.
Maybe a little more well versed in those comms, as Eric said. But let's talk about our grand final. I think if you told me it was going to be Dallas and Paris, like I said earlier, I would have told you you're crazy. But that was, in fact, what it was. And it was no contest. I mean, the first hard point was dominant. The S&D was a slaughter. And the first half of the Dom, you knew it was already over going into the second half. Something, Eric, that I noticed Denz tweeted this. He said, Dallas had every answer to anything we did. It felt like they were ice skating, putting on a show in that grand final. And is that just a highlight of the discrepancy between the best team in this game and a team that might be like bottom average or somewhere around there? That's just the difference you're going to see.
I mean, I think there is a tier discrepancy, like realistically, with that being played on a Dallas server. Like you even just saw Clay tweet out that those guys are probably on 15 ping or something, where the LA
Mhm.
guys are probably on 100, and like that stuff makes a big difference. Like we can't, teams don't use it as excuses and things like that. But being an impartial party here, like Paris had a massive disadvantage playing against Dallas, and even the Dallas players are recognizing it.
Yeah,
So
Clay tweeted out. Yeah, as you said.
I think part of it could be a large part of it could be due to that. I do think Dallas is like the most talented team in the game, and I agree with Cap that like I'm not too high on Paris yet as well. Um, but just playing in conditions like that is not a fun experience.
Now, Cap, is some people I think still have a little bit of confusion about how the servers work and how they're picked and everything else. Is that something that you could lay out a little bit more to folks if they're not sure?
So yeah, so the league picks 3 servers for the teams to veto, and then each team vetoes one, and the third one is what gets played on. So there's servers, some on the East Coast, but they rarely even get used. I think they're in like Virginia. And then there's some Texas servers, some Chicago servers, and then some LA servers.
Just to
Okay.
clarify that part of what he said, so before each tournament, the league sends an email where like with the 7 other potential matches in that tournament. So I'll get a list emailed to me that like if you're playing Florida, here are your 3 host choices. If you're playing
Yeah.
Dallas, here are your 3 host choices. So it's like 3 based off of the 2 teams opposing each other. But sorry, continue.
Yes. So like Clay tweeted it, like the servers for that matchup are Chicago, Dallas, or not Dallas, not Dallas. It's a Texas server, Chicago server,
Mhm.
Texas server, and a LA server. So naturally, Paris has 3 or 4 people in LA. Dallas vetoes that one. And the problem is being from LA and playing from LA, the Chicago servers are pretty significantly worse than the Texas ones. The Chicago ones are way worse ping. Um, they have some um dropping frame issues, so it's like
Mhm.
real mess on Chicago servers from here. I don't know why.
So you
But
try to
so
avoid them when you can.
yeah, so Paris bite the bullet and they veto the Chicago one to play the Dallas one, where Dallas has 4 people in
Right.
Dallas. And like obviously with the COVID situation, the league's doing the best they can, but in a matchup like that, like having a Midwest server would change that matchup so much, make it so
Mhm.
much more fair. Like we said again, the Clay literally just won and he's like, "Hey, this is ridiculous. This is not fair." They're getting an unfair shot at this. So hopefully it changes by chance, but we'll see.
Yeah, we will see indeed. But let's move on to our key takeaways from what we saw this weekend. So if we can bring those up onto the screen, that would be great. I would certainly appreciate that. Of course, these key takeaways, how they work, going to be the major things that we noticed from the weekend. Pretty basic and straightforward, guys. Dallas is the best team in the league. I think you can make a very definitive case for that. But you look at Paris, are they a flash in the pan? Or will this last? And finally, Optic, they need to make it out of groups. Optic, of course, our team need to make it out of groups next weekend at CDL Toronto to secure a top 8 seed. Paris making it to that grand final shook up the top 8, ninth
Yeah,
place.
let me
Yeah, go for
break
it. Go
that
for it.
down a little bit. So
Mhm.
Paris doesn't play next weekend. So the points that they're at now are set. So we're competing with Toronto and Paris for that 8th spot really. Our first match is against Toronto, so obviously beating them would be huge. And then we would play, assuming we beat them, we'd play the winner of Seattle and Huntsman.
Mhm.
So realistically, what it comes down to is as long as we win our matches to get out of groups, then we would secure that top 8 seed, which is really important because then we'd start in the winners bracket for champs.
Right, and that obviously for clear reasons would be a huge advantage to any team to be starting in winners as opposed to losers bracket. But also Paris, we've been talking consistently about them during this show, but we don't really know what to make of them. It does feel like a flash fan moment. I don't know if this magic can continue on for them. Obviously, they won't be playing next weekend. But Eric, I feel like I don't really expect it to be sustained. I
I
suppose.
think it's going to be really tough for them to do it because like this happened to us this year too, where we had that stretch where we did well at a few tournaments, and then now Paris doesn't play again until a full month, like at playoffs.
Mhm.
So that downtime, like when you do have momentum in good tournaments, can really negatively affect you, or at least like it doesn't help, when you're playing well to not be playing in competition. So it'll definitely be a test for them to try to maintain that level over the next month without having a tournament environment.
Yeah, we've seen certainly how that can affect people. But Eric, I'll let you lead off this one. But we talked with Austin, with Slasher last weekend in the post-game lobby about the debut for Draza and Hollow. They have had that debut now this weekend. So Eric, I'd love like your thoughts on everything that happened with Draza and Hollow. Of course, their first professional Call of Duty League matches, and any thoughts Cap has for kind of those rookies coming in and having that first weekend and going against one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah, I mean, I think the team definitely looked a lot better with both of them involved. We obviously didn't have the results to show for it, and it is unfortunate that we played Florida twice there. They are a very talented team, and we fought them really close, as close as possible in the first matchup. And the second one was looking really good until that spawn happened. Probably would have been up 2-1 there, but positive steps there. Hollow is a slower AR player. A big reason we picked him up was like his current knowledge of the game and how vocal he is with things like that. He texted our group chat after and said like he feels like him and Draws both said they felt like they could have played a lot better.
Mhm.
Um, but I was really happy just even to like the clutch moments out of both of them in game 5. Like you never know how people are going to react in those high pressure situations at a level they haven't been before. And Draza really impressed me. He led us in like KD after day one, I think. I'm not sure what his final one was, but he was making like a lot of really good plays, a lot of 2, 3 pieces. He's very a fast player, and it was something we were missing for sure. So it's fun to watch him. He's playing from Seattle on like 120 plus ping in all these matches. So I think he's going to have a really bright future.
Yeah, Cap, I'm not sure if you have any thoughts on what you saw from that. Obviously, as one of the most knowledgeable veterans in the league, like seeing rookies come in like that, in terms of performance wise, like it seems like they did pretty solid
I
for the
mean,
squad for the most part.
yeah, they looked good. I mean, um, they had a lot of clutch moments, like Eric said. They were like two of the better players on the team this weekend with like the clutch plays they were making and like the impact they were actually having, not
Mhm.
just like KD and all that. And I've talked to like Slasher and TJ a little bit. Like they're very knowledgeable about the game. There's the two rookies, Draws and Hollow. So like if they're bringing that knowledge to the team and they're even helping those three learn the game more, like they could make a run here. I have faith in the way they looked. Has had that first match against Florida, that last round 11 going differently. Like who knows how this weekend could have went. But I mean that's just how the cookie crumbles in COD. And then had to play Florida again. That's a tough team to beat. So kind of unlucky there for them, but promising. And then not a lot of time to turn around, but definitely good signs.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It feels like there's good energy, but I think that's going to be it for us in this section, Cap. So thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. It's great to talk to you as always, guys. We're going to keep
Bye,
moving
Cap. I'll see you
through
on
now.
Warzone in 20 minutes.
See ya.
See you, Cap. We're going to do our power ranking section now. We're going to bring in Hunter, who's going to reveal what his post game lobby power rankings are after this event. So what's up, Hunter? How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. It was a fun weekend overall, I think, and I kind of want to get right into my new and updated power rankings after the London home series. I mainly want to touch on a few teams. Obviously, Paris I think did better than anybody was expecting, um, but I think Katie brought up a good point about the splash in the pan. I think based on the results they had, the respawn was still struggling. Like none of the players
Mhm.
had over a 1.0 KD in respawns except for Shocks, who had a 1.07 in domination, I believe. So I ranked them 10th. I'm curious about what you guys think about that.
I mean, I think Paris certainly has to go up. Like, clearly, you're making
Right.
it to a grand final. There has to be movement there. I look at someone like the Gorillas, and it felt like they had this momentum when they almost swept
Yeah.
Atlanta and then ended up, Aqua with the team kill a couple tournaments ago that ended up losing it in that game 5. It felt like they had this momentum that just crumbled away after they failed to take down Atlanta. And then they get eliminated by Paris twice in 2 tournaments. And I look at them and it just seems like any and all chemistry has just disappeared. Like, it just seems like they're kind of on autopilot. And I feel the same way about Seattle, which is tough to say because Slacked, Octane having great performances this weekend. But I just get the sense the passion's not there for them anymore after a very long, tough season. So yeah, I can understand why Paris should understandably be moving up in the ranking.
Yeah,
I
I
agree
think
on
Paris
Elliot.
probably earned the right to be a little bit higher. I mean, we have a small sample size, but like they did just get second at a tournament and beat the defending champions. Obviously, it's one series against New York there, but I do think it's tough to have a team come out of finals and still be ranked 10th overall. But overall, like I don't think I'd put them above like 8th or something.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we need to see a little more from them than just this one run to see if it's not just a one-off. But talk to us about your top 4, Hunter.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agreed. I think Eric said it before. Obviously, it was one of the key takeaways of Katie. Dallas is easily, to me, the best team in the league right now. I think they they definitely proved that with their 3-0 against Florida. And I mean, it wasn't. There were some close games in the respawn, but like the search just looked great out of Dallas. I think they're number 1 easily.
Yeah, I feel like Eric, I don't know what your thoughts are. I still, because I know we kind of disagreed with Hunter on this last week. I still don't think Chicago should be 4th. I still feel like I would swap them in 3rd with Atlanta. What do you think?
I personally think Atlanta is probably the second best team in the game
Yeah.
right now. We obviously didn't get to see them play this weekend, but as I mentioned before, they're just one of those teams that I have a lot of faith in to pull together each
Mhm.
series. It almost always feels like the game's like never out of their hand, which is something that the great teams you sort of see each year in Call of Duty. So I'd actually put them at second, and then I think you could make an argument for Florida or Huntsman third, fourth. Um, but
I think
they both look really good.
Atlanta, Florida, I would say is really close because I think they had very similar home series this weekend. Florida kind of looked shaky, and I think that was Atlanta in the New York home series.
Yeah,
Yep.
well, I think you looked to kind of wrap it up. 2, 3, 4. It seems very clear. Definitively, Empire, yes, number
Yep.
1. 2, 3, 4. You can make solid arguments for shuffling them in any way you want, but overall,
Absolutely.
Empire, Florida, Atlanta, Huntsman are your top 4 for good reason. All with multiple tournament wins. Dallas securing their 3rd. So Hunter, no true banter yet. No super spicy shuffles right now
Not
because
yet,
everything seems
but-
to be fairly clear cut.
But next weekend we have a huge weekend. There's I think all the top 4 teams are there. Obviously, we're there. Toronto's there. I think we could see a lot of movement before playoffs.
Yeah, who knows? Definitely the potential for some upsets, that's for sure. But Hunter, I want to say thank you so much for coming in with the Power Rankings. We are going to do them with Hunter every single weekend. Maybe we'll get a little more spice depending on what happens with Toronto. But now I want to keep things moving along with Eric as we get to talk about our standout players, someone who really caught our eye, someone who's making big moves, and the person for us this week, Eric, we have to talk about Illy. Of course, he's on the winning team, Dallas, their 3rd tournament win this year. And we talk about Shotzi all the time because Shotzi puts up huge numbers and has those fancy plays. But Illy is an extremely important part of the equation for him to be able to do what he does.
Yeah, I mean, Illy's been a phenomenal player in his rookie season here. We knew he was talented from what he was doing online this year. I think this is like such a tough situation with picking a player to watch, especially in the Dallas world, because they have just talent across the board. They all had like 1.2s or something this weekend. And like, even like Illy is not getting credit because of Shotzi. Hook isn't getting credit because of either of them. Hook's like one of the best players in the game. So that's just like a 3-headed dragon there with the 2 old ass men that are tearing people apart this year. And all 3 of those guys deserve a ton of credit.
Yeah, that's very true. Of course, Hook securing his long-awaited first win this year as well, first tournament win. But yeah, I love though that you make that argument, Eric, for the fact that there's so much talent doing so well. I like that there's competition for standout. It's not just one person every single time.
I mean, that's what you're going to see with the best teams in the game. Like, you will never see one person be so far ahead and shoulders above people. Like, usually you might have like 2 or 3 that are like clearly better than the others, but to be a top level team, like, you're not going to just have one superstar.
Yeah, you can't rely on just one person to carry you to consistent victory. But let's keep moving things on. The next event, we've touched on it a little bit, will be CDL Toronto, the final event before we get in to the latter end of the league, the end of year number 1. And the top 4 teams will all be in attendance: Atlanta, Florida, Dallas, Chicago, Minnesota, Seattle, Toronto, and Optic. So Optic, Eric, will face off against Toronto. The 4th series on day 1. They'll be the last series for Friday. But all the heavy hitters there. So we could see some serious matches. I feel like it's really hard to guess at who's going to make it to the grand finals.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a really exciting tournament just because these are really going to have a massive impact on seeding. So you're going to have the top 4 teams fighting for the top 2 seeds, which secure you a winners round 3 spot.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the battle that we're involved in is the battle to make it in the winners bracket. Us in Toronto are competing against Paris. Obviously, Paris isn't playing next weekend, but they are up on us 20 points now, I think it is.
Right.
So yeah, every match next weekend is going to matter. It's going to be, one of the best tournaments to watch for sure.
Yeah, and to Eric's point, guys, even if it's not the big names, even if it's not Chicago or Atlanta or Dallas, every single matchup is going to matter for the potential ranking outcomes for champs. So every series will be exciting because of the potential ramifications of what will happen from a win or a loss. But you guys have been throwing up questions this whole entire time. Thank you for doing so. We've picked out a couple of them to talk through now before we wrap up the show. And the first one, Eric, is something that you can speak to. How is Optic's map pool doing? Is it bigger now?
I would definitely say it's getting bigger. We're getting better at maps that we struggled with in the past. Obviously, when you have 2 out of 5 new players on the team, it's going to really shift like strength across the board.
Mhm.
But that's something that we've really been focusing on and will be really working on going into champs, because the more diverse of a map pool you can have, the better it makes the veto process. The more mind games you can play. It's never a good thing to have an auto veto. So we're definitely making progress in that area for sure.
And that's what you love to hear. We touched on it a little bit as well earlier, but what do you think of the newcomers, Draza and Hollow? I talked to Hollow yesterday after their match in a brief little interview that we threw up on Twitter. But it seems like composure wise, they kept the nerves under control. Eric, I talk about nerves a lot because I look at it as an outsider with no firsthand experience of being like, wow, that I would be so nervous going up against the top teams in this environment in Call of Duty League and being an AM and now you're a pro. So when you look at what do you think about them? What do you think that they did and how they handled it?
I mean, I think they handled the pressure absolutely fine. Like, it is, as I said, everyone's playing from home in the comfort of their own bedroom, so you don't hit the full level of nerves that playing at LAN on a major stage could be. But for a lot of these players, as Cap said, like, this is repetition. These guys are doing this 10, 12 hours a day every single day. So you almost like get so focused on just what you're doing in the game that you don't even like remember, what the outside circumstances are. It's just like, let's win this map. And both of them like texted me right after, and we're like, we're going to win this next tournament. Like, we're so motivated. Like, we're much better team than we showed. And like, I do believe that they are a lot better than like a result showed. So I'm excited for the future. I like seeing the confidence out of the young kids like that and just their drive in general. I'm excited about both of them.
Now, our final question: how did you guys even scout Hollow and Draza? Those were great pickups.
So scouting in amateur COD is a really weird thing, since there aren't like data points, or like, I can go back and I did do this. I watched like a ton of challenger gameplay and seeing things like that. But obviously those are like limited sample size. So
Mhm.
I would find, basically I started with a pool of like 10 amateur players that a lot of people were talking about or I had heard about, things like that. Interview some of them, like a lot of them you can go on their Twitch, watch their VODs and everything. It's basically a combo of watching a ton of Call of Duty, talking to a lot of people familiar with the scene, getting like a lot of different opinions and seeing what they think, and then like combining a lot of information together and seeing what I think would be the best fit for the team moving forward. And then obviously I work with my current players too. So we tried each of them out. We worked through a few things. It was a long process and it's definitely a confusing one, but I think we made 2 good pickups.
Yeah, I certainly think we did too, especially as we said, there's one important thing, and that is passion and hunger, and Draza and Hollow certainly have both. Folks, so that is going to close it out for the second episode of the Postgame Lobby presented by Optic Gaming Los Angeles. This is a show we are going to do after every grand final of every tournament, and something that we will also be continuing into the off season. So the content will not stop once Champs is done. I am your host, Katie Bedford, joined by Mud Dog, our general manager, and various players like Slasher, like JCap, who was on today, Hunter, of course, for the power rankings, and we'll continue to be creating this content for you. We thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned. We've got some stuff in the works, like giveaways and other fun goodies for you, but we appreciate the support. We will catch you next week after CDL Toronto concludes for the third episode of the Postgame Lobby.